Can you even? I can't wait to.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, Owensboro Board of Commissioners, regular meeting April 16th. At this time, we'd ask our city clerk, Beth Cecil, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jeff Sanford.
Here.
Commissioner Larry Conder.
Here.
Mayor Tom Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Maglaner.
Here.
Commissioner Pam Smithwright.
Here.
Thank you. We'll now have the invocation and the pledge by Commissioner Larry Conder. Please stand.
Thank you, Mayor. If everyone please bow, pray with me, or silent meditation, whichever you might prefer. Dear Lord, on this beautiful spring day, we are reminded of all the blessings bestowed upon us, even with the destruction of one of your 90-year-old cathedral churches. That church is people, today and always. Where two of us are gathered in your name, you're always there. And especially with this being Holy Week, tear this temple down and I'll rebuild it in 3 days. I ask you to touch our minds to think of the task we need to do, to touch our hearts to love one another as you taught us to, touch our hands that we do your will. Bless our city and our nation and our world, protect our city and our staff, our first responders and all military, both here and abroad. I ask this in your name. The commission says, Amen. Amen. Now the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, please.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, we're going to have the opportunity to swear in a couple of more of Owensboro's finest. So I thought everybody would get up for that, but just these two guys coming up. Okay, could you please stand right there, and I'll do you got to get over in the middle, man. All right, perfect, that's good. See the Owensboro, there you go, got it, perfect. So I'll say a few words and you guys repeat them. So what are we supposed to do? God, tell him to raise his right hand. Raise your right hand, please. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
And the Constitution of this Commonwealth.
And be faithful and true.
And be faithful and true.
To the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
To the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
So long as I continue a citizen thereof.
As long as I continue a citizen thereof.
And that I will faithfully execute.
And that I will faithfully execute.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
The office of police officer.
The office of police officer.
According to law.
According to law.
And I do solemnly swear.
And I do solemnly swear.
That since the adoption of the present Constitution.
That since the adoption of the present Constitution.
I, being a citizen of this state.
I, being a citizen of this state.
Have not fought a duel.
Have not fought a duel.
With deadly weapons.
With deadly weapons.
Within this state.
Within this state.
Nor out of it.
Nor out of it.
Nor have I sent or accepted.
Nor have I sent or accepted.
A challenge to fight a duel.
A challenge to fight a duel.
With deadly weapons.
With deadly weapons.
Nor have I acted.
Nor have I acted.
As second in carrying out a challenge.
As second in carrying out a challenge.
Nor aided or assisted.
Nor aided or assisted.
Any person.
Any person.
Thus offending.
Thus offending.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're in. Congratulations. Good. Good job. Family can take pictures. $5 each. Bargain today. Okay, third shift.
Oh.
Okay, congratulations, Chad and Derek. Wish you all the luck in the world. Next item on the agenda is the Riverport Authority update. Brian Wright, President and CEO, and he has pictures for us as well. Brian, please state your name and address for the record.
Brian Wright, 1911 Fieldcrest Drive, Owensboro, Kentucky. Well, thank you, Mayor Watson and the city commissioners, as well as the city staff, for giving the Riverport an opportunity to share our current status. But my presentation is twofold. One, the current status of the Riverport as it is this year, as well as an economic impact study that we conducted at the end of last year with the help of Commonwealth Economics. Casey Bolton is here with me, and he'll be going over the highlights and the key points of this study. To start, I want to reflect back over the last 42 years, and for me this is a key slide on the initial investment into the Riverport. Our Port Authority started with initial investment from the City of Owensboro, $2.9 million, as well as $4.3 million from Kentucky Port and River Development Commission, and $2.4 million with Economic Development Administration. Today, 42 years later, we've had almost $29 million in private investment into the port, as well as $59 million in Riverport investments back into our facility. In addition, we've accumulated $1.8 million in grant funds up to this past year. This goes through the ending year of 2018. In addition to those funds and our initial investment and where we stand today, which is roughly $100 million, is depicted in the pie graph. The Owensboro Riverport has had the opportunity to give back to the city for the sake of economic development and the maintenance of roads. If you look at the history from early 2001 through this past year, that accumulates to over $5 million that's been given back to the city for the sake of economic development. A little more in detail of our port activity. Currently we have 46 employees, full-time employees. One of our challenges today is that we could hire 2 to 4 more. Obviously, workforce development is starting to impact the Riverport, along with many other industries around us, and we're starting to see the relevance of skill-based employees that we can hire to do the jobs that we need to do within the Port Authority. Ultimately, I foresee us to exceed the 50 number in the next couple of years. Our total annual payroll is $2.5 million. Dive into a few details that may be boring to some but are relevant in the transportation sector. This graph depicts the tonnages over the last 6 years. This past year we finished at 1.1, almost 1.2 million tons. Of those tons that we moved, almost 52% broken out in barge, 20% in rail, and another 28% by truck. We track this on an annual basis because it really dictates our next moves as it relates to the modes of transportation. Operating revenue, we finished last year at the end of June of 2018 at $14.8 million. Over the last 3 years, we've been holding roughly $14 million. This year, I expect us to finish right at $14 million in revenue generated. Now, I will point out on the revenue side, our business is somewhat subject to the market conditions as it relates to metal trades, river conditions, and other. To highlight a few key projects that are currently active this year, starting with the Solvay bulk storage of $3.6 million. This was a public-private partnership with a company called Solvay Chemical. We're wrapping up the construction of that, and we expect to go into production roughly in May timeframe. This is a 5-year payback. Solvay Chemical will pay us back over the course of 5 years for the sum of the dollars that we've invested in this structure, which is a 10,000-ton storage facility. The next item on the list is a rail loop inter-track expansion of $1.5 million. This is part of a congestion mitigation air quality grant that we received, and basically it's taken trucks off the road and utilizing rail to reduce the air pollution. And this will come into play in my next topic. The other investments that we're making this year is $480,000 in property acquisition and then $2 million in equipment and infrastructure, for a total of roughly $7.5 million. So where does this rail track play into what our infrastructure looks like today and what it'll look like in the future? This picture depicts a flat car of 100 auto frames that we recently started shipping in February for one of our partners, Matulsa. This project started several years ago, and thanks to the city, as well as Senator Joe Bowen and the Economic Development Group for supporting this initiative for Matulsa to grow 113 jobs. As a result, the Riverport has now a 6-year agreement for shipping roughly 100,000 frames per year up north, utilizing the new track that will be open sometime mid-May or so. And the last point on this is just another example of how we fulfill our mission to help support economic development and job growth in our area. As the City Commission is aware, the Owensboro Riverport secured a federal build grant in December of 2018. The purpose of this grant is to improve the access from 2nd Street into the Riverport property. This project has been on our local metropolitan planning organization's list for many years, but it never made it to the 6-year road plan. As a Port Authority, we had the ability to submit an application through the DOT to help improve the last mile or the access to river and rail. Now, due to the joint efforts of not only the KYTC, but also the Cabinet for Economic Development and our portion of this grant, we will see this road come to fruition in the next few years. Again, this is another example of the Riverport playing a key role in future growth of our city and economic development. So with a $15 million bill grant, 11.5 of federal dollars, how are we going to make this work financially? This graph depicts our future cash flow as it would without the bill grant. As you can see on this graph, there's 2 parts to it. One is our financial obligations, which is part of our general obligation bonds, and our standard capital that we have to invest back into our port. Overall, we're holding our cash flow roughly $6 million on an annual basis. We're keeping our finances and our capital below that number. When you factor in the build grant, as you can see, the dollars spike up significantly over the next few years as it relates to the project plan and the costs associated with implementing this $15 million project. However, with some sacrifices on the capital side at the Riverport, we feel confident from a cash flow perspective over the next 4 to 5 years that we'll be able to sustain our reserves of $6.2 million. That $6.2 million is primarily driven behind making sure we are protected under general obligation bond and also to protect the port in the event of any major infrastructure that would need to be put in place that's not planned. Now, the economic impact analysis study that was conducted by Commonwealth Economics Just to give a little background, over the last couple years, the question's always been asked, how does the Riverport impact our community? What does the Riverport really mean to our community? We know the Riverport moves a lot of tons in and out, but what impact does it have the same as any other industry in our community? So after we completed last year's audit, we solicited Commonwealth Economics to go through the process of looking at our operational impact, our capital impact, industry impact, and our transportation infrastructure impact. And at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Casey Bolton to share some of the highlights of this study and the key findings of this study.
Thanks, Brian. He gave you a pretty good intro. When you look at the operations of the Riverport, it's pretty complex when you start thinking about all of the jobs and lives that their day-to-day operations touch. But we did try to break it out into a few different categories so that we can look at it from those different angles. The first being operational impacts, and really what we did was we looked at sort of what their budget is, what are they spending money on, and what are those impacts. And we estimated that generates about $16.1 million of output and supports $8.6 million of labor income. So, while their payroll is closer to the $2 to $3 million range, that doesn't include all of the money they spend on utilities, contract labor, everything else that goes into what they do that is part of their budget each year. When you break that all out, it supports about 200 jobs throughout the region. That was just in fiscal year 2018. The average over the past 5 years, it's really about the same, but as he showed, their operations have been ramping up since then. So you got about $7 million of labor income and 161 jobs is what we estimated. So that's just what they do day-to-day operational within their system. That's a little bit different than thinking about all of the jobs that are touched in the community, which we'll go over here in a second. As he mentioned, they've invested a lot in their operations over the past few years from a capital investment standpoint, actually constructing new projects, building roadways, $46.1 million in construction projects over the past 5 years. That's obviously a lot of jobs that are generated as a result of that, people constructing buildings, the materials that go into that, the supply, the transport. We estimate that has resulted in about $67.7 million of total impact just in the grad area, and that employed about close to 600 people over that time frame and generated about $20 million in related construction wages and supportive development there. So, that's kind of operations and investment. The real question when you think about what goes on at the Riverport is, well, how many jobs does this support? And that's a really tough question to ask when you think about the companies like Matulsa and other companies that use the services of the Riverport. You think about the farming industry here, all the grain that has to come in and the fertilizers, or the grain that has to go out and the fertilizers that come in to support those businesses. So we looked at all of the businesses or the types of industries within the grad area that utilize these types of services. And when you look at it, in 2016, about $10.7 billion in output in the grad district would have been related to industries that use the Riverport services. So you think about all the farmers in the area, all the industry that touches that, that's over, it's close to 10% of the GDP in the area, I think, on average. So, you think about what does business in Owensboro and the grad area look like without the Riverport? It's a lot different. And, I think their operations and the way that they're able to operate efficiently to attract businesses to the area is really an invaluable service. And when you look at it, more holistically, it's really pretty impressive. So, the transportation infrastructure, obviously they facilitated a lot of that. The latest would be the build grant. If anybody's been on that road, it's ready for widening, and I think that's really good asset that, I don't think you really touched on it, but being a public entity, they were able to apply. They did all that internally, is my understanding. They applied for that grant, received approval, and have another $11 million coming back to the community that wouldn't have been here otherwise. So a lot of transportation in and out that really makes things go around here. If you have any questions specifically, certainly happy to do my best to answer those without hopefully getting too far down in the weeds. But you'd be surprised.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Brian, do you have anything else?
I would like to just thank the City Commission for the support of the Riverport. Thank you for this opportunity to share current status and where we're heading in the future.
Well, I can tell you all, we were in D.C. last week, and Brian got an opportunity to speak with the maritime folks, and he's truly exceptional Riverport director, and it's recognized in Washington what a great job he does, and I'm sure his board's very helpful in all that and all his employees. But thank you, Brian, for helping our community. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
If I could just make a general comment, if I could, Mayor, please.
That long yeah, go ahead.
Just generally, thank you, Brian, for all the work you do. But I do believe you have some staff members here. Could you, because the people who really do that work out there, some of them are sitting back here, and the ones that are out in the yard, they're the ones that really make this. Those
Great.
numbers show up we just saw. They're the ones that do it.
Great point, Commissioner Condor. In the back row, David Hicks, who's our
You must
operations-
stand when he recognizes your name. This is Facebook Live.
David Hicks, our operations manager, Kendria Nichols, who's our account manager and customer service, Amanda Boland, who controls all the numbers, and Michelle Payne, who's our warehouse and distribution manager. And then along with that, we have a couple board members and our legal attorney, Brian Reynolds, and J.T. Fulkerson, and Everett Taylor is
He's
somewhere
over
in the vicinity.
sleeping.
He said he would be happy to speak at any point.
Okay. Let's hear it for the Riverport.
Yeah.
I knew him when he was just a little feller, too. Okay, the next item on the agenda will be the tax increment financing update. Mr. Nate Pagan and Ms. Angela Hamrick, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're
As
welcome.
the Commission might recall from previous updates, our 2 tax increment financing districts were activated last year. That means that 2018 is the first year for which we'll receive payments from the state for the incremental taxes generated in the TIF districts. Over the last few weeks, the finance staff have gone through the process of compiling the incremental taxes to submit to the state later this month. Angela Hamrick will provide an overview of that arduous task of compiling the increments and the numbers we'll submit to Frankfurt.
Ms. Hamrick?
Yes, Mayor and Commission. City manager was correct when he said arduous. It was tedious and it was a lot of work. But I'll have to say it was a whole lot of mailings, phone calls, assisting with form preparation, online research, trying to find contacts and information, hours upon hours to get where we are. But I'm happy to say that we have successfully pulled together this massive amount of information required of the state for us to submit for reimbursement. So before I go any further, I wanted to first recognize Danae Galloway, if she wants to stand.
Please stand, Danae.
She is our Deputy Director of Finance and Support Services. And someone else who has worked on this project is Whitney Brown.
Good
And
job, Whitney.
She is, they've both been stars in this project. Whitney comes to our finance department from our tax department, so she has a very good background to utilize in this endeavor. They both have worked diligently on this project. I'll say a project like this takes the utmost organizational and tracking skills and a keen eye to catch something that doesn't look quite right so it can be corrected. We've had several forms come in where they have to report what they reported in total and then break it down, and they may be wrong on what they previously reported.
Just a little example of how difficult it is to chase somebody down that may have just done. This is crazy. I'm telling you, this is nuts.
You know, some, particularly for the construction, the contractors, particularly those from out of state, it could have taken up to 10 phone calls, Mayor. We would send the forms out 2 and 3 times. We would then try and find a phone number, get an email address. There were some that it was tedious for one company. But then there's other companies. We'd send the form out, and they were just on it and would send it right back. So, but like I said, we were able to get everything done the way we needed to do. So it was busy. But to give a little more detail, the downtown TIF has 2 incremental areas, which we also call the footprint. The state footprint contains approximately 230 businesses, while the local footprint, which the state does not reimburse on, contains approximately 280 businesses.
Can you explain that, why the state doesn't reimburse on that, please?
Certainly, Mayor. We have on the downtown TIF, we have an area that's smaller, and it's called our state increment financing area. We have a little bit larger area, and that is what we call our local increment financing area. Now, we'll use the larger area to pull together numbers for our minimum capital investment, and we had to spend a minimum of $20 million before we could activate. So that larger area helps us to do that. The larger area, the state would only approve a certain size of area, and so we went a little bit larger to get that capital investment in there, as well as opportunities that we might exercise locally that we were not able to do within the state parameters. And Casey may be able to expand on that more if you have anything to add to that.
Pretty well said.
Oh, okay, thanks, Casey.
Look at him.
All right, and then our Gateway TIF area currently has 65 businesses that we had to reach out to, and as you could imagine, most of those were construction, and so we've got other businesses going in and up out there. So this represents these businesses represent businesses with locations in the TIF area, as well as those who did construction in the area. So in total, we had to reach out to like 575 businesses. So kudos to finance. A laundry list of information had to be collected by us. We had to collect the state and local payroll withholding, and state and local property tax, the state sales tax, and the city net profit, as well as the state tax ID numbers and the state tax payroll withholding numbers. So that's a lot of state collecting, but that's what's required of us. We had to collect all of the state data to submit to the state for them to audit. In addition to that, we had to complete business questionnaires for each and every contact to submit with our report. I'll say this.
So grouchy down there when I come in the afternoon.
Me?
Oh, them two right there.
I'll have to let them speak to that. All I can say is this was just a monumental undertaking by the city and by finance. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone out there who complied with our data requests and getting the information to us. And Beth, if she would put up a PowerPoint, please. So what I wanted to do is demonstrate to our viewing audience and to the commission what we're looking at for what we've collected for the calendar year 2018. As you'll see, for the downtown TIF, the state increment is $750,000. The local increment is $210,000. For Gateway, the state increment was $300,000. Local increment is $110,000. These TIF dollars will be used to pay for state-approved public infrastructure, such as the Bluegrass Museum and the parking garage. What these amounts represent is the incremental 2018 activity over the 2015 baseline activity, and also reduced by 80%. This 80% will be reflected in our TIF funds. It'll be 2 funds that we set up as new funds here at the city, with the remaining 20% remaining in our general fund. The numbers reflected on the screen in each category exceeded the state consultant's estimates. So we're very happy and pleased with that. With the exception of one category, we came in under projections for sales tax at the Gateway, and that is very easily explainable. You can drive out there and kind of tell for yourself. The Malco's not open yet. That's delayed. The hotel is delayed. retail, a lot of it moved in sometime during the year of 18. So I look at it as just a timing difference there. And as a reminder, just so everyone knows, the state will reimburse $24.5 million for the downtown TIF, and the state will reimburse $20.5 million to us for the gateway TIF. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer. Also was going to turn it over to Casey Bolton. He is our consultant and has endured a lot of phone calls and meetings, and he has been very helpful to us every single time we've needed him, and he's been good guidance for us.
Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Casey Bolton, 389 South Upper, Lexington, Kentucky.
There you go.
I think one thing I do want to point out is, I'll say that the next step in the process is to formally request this increment from the state. We've made all the calculations at the local level. We're pretty close to wrapping those up. And these are preliminary estimates at the state level. The process going forward is all of the information that we've collected to date we'll package and send to the state, and then there will be a lot of back and forth with the state, hopefully getting an easier reception from some businesses that as they work to verify the estimates that we've generated. But we do think, currently this will be the increment that we do request from the state, and we don't have any reason to believe that, it should be very far off from this. I do think it is important to note all of the hard work that's gone into this, particularly from staff here, and I think these are pretty good estimates, and that's with no local option sales tax. It's pretty nice to see some of those state dollars come back into the community. And you look at some of the projects that have been supported in the area, some of the things that are going on, it's really pretty impressive to see all of it coming to fruition.
Been kind of hard, hasn't it, Jeff?
Been tough.
It's been tough, hasn't it?
So, the process is over the next few months, the state will work with us to verify these numbers, be sure they have all of the pertinent information they need to confirm the amount of sales tax, withholding tax, and property tax that actually was remitted to the state. And then hopefully sometime by the end of the year, they will actually write checks back to the city for hopefully something close, if not more than these amounts.
That was my question. I read where some people were waiting a year or two to get their reimbursement back, so
yeah,
I didn't really want to be in that line, so I was trying to curious. You think by the end of this calendar year there's an opportunity for some of this money to come back? You think?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it is very well organized, what we've put together and really what staff here has put together. There will be some back and forth and some need to coordinate with the state on that to be sure that, quite frankly, no businesses are overlooked and credit not given where it's due. But we should be in a good shape to have those conversations. Our staff at Commonwealth Economics will stay in contact with the Department of Revenue to be sure they have what they need, answer any questions as they come up, and then work with staff here to be sure we're getting those answered. They will be contacting all of most, if not all of the businesses that have submitted business questionnaires and their tax withholding information, particularly those that have multiple locations, within the state, so that they can verify how much of sales or withholding was attributable to locations within the footprint. The more willing all of these businesses are to cooperate and answer the questions on the front end and make it easy on them, the faster the process will go. So we will work with them to be sure anybody that's not cooperating, we'll go knock on their door.
We got a pretty good staff, don't we?
Yeah. As staffs go around the state, they're pretty good.
All right, good. Anybody else have any comments?
I got one question.
Commissioner Sanford.
So the state has a staff that does TIF reconciliation only? Is that how it works through the Department of Revenue?
They actually do it by tax type, and
Okay.
they have different people within each category. So there's a sales tax division, a withholding division, and a property tax division. We work with Gary Morse at the Department of Revenue, who kind of oversees all of them and tries to hold everybody's feet to the flame to work through those different projects. There are now probably close to 15 active TIFs throughout the state, so they do have a lot to to
Yeah.
do each year, and more coming online. So, I mean, it is an onerous process on their end. So, it's nice to have boots on the ground that can help kind of verify, be sure they're familiar with the project.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Condor has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been accused many times of getting down in the weeds, and I have never gotten down in the weeds like these ladies do. Not possible, nor do I want to. But my question is this: we seem to have the revenue streams look like they're coming in fairly well, but the amount of dollars that it is forecasted to be collected, will the other debt associated with those revenue streams be enough to cover, or do we know enough to be able to even answer that question yet? Will we have enough money to make debt payments?
Are you asking if the forecasted TIF revenue stream is sufficient to pay the debt on the state-approved public infrastructure?
There you go, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I like that, yes.
Well, based on the
definitive, too.
based on the
Yeah.
facts
Information
presented
provided.
to us
Yeah.
today, yes.
Correct, because this is your first time to do this, and so once you get the routine down, then you will probably have a better feel of what may happen in the future.
Certainly, Commissioner. The first year is always the most difficult as far as developing the process and developing your estimates, if you will. But we were very ultra conservative on forecasting the revenues based on what the state consultants and our consultants provided to us on the projected revenue streams. So we were conservative there in applying what we had available for the debt service ahead of us.
Very good. It sounds like it's going to work. Thank you very much, Angela.
You're welcome.
And thank you, ladies, for your work. It was awesome. You've done a great job.
Okay, any other discussion on the TIF update? Okay, we'll move on to item 5A, approval of minutes dated April 2nd, 2019. I'll make a motion to approve. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 5B, I'd like for you all to consider these board appointments, please. The Shively York Neighborhood Alliance, reappoint Reggie Helm to a 2-year term expiring April the 24th, 2021. Wesley and Shawnee Neighborhood Alliance, reappoint David Rudd to a 2-year term expiring 24/21. Northwest Neighborhood Alliance, appoint David Glover, Rafe Buckner, Lindsay Ford, Quentin Coleman, Marshall Coleman, Sheila Coro, Amber Action, David Curry, and Justin Klein to a 2-year term expiring April 16th, 2021. And to the Senior Community Center of Owensboro and Davis County Board, appoint Patty Jenkins to a 3-year term expiring December the 31st, 2021. Have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I will tell you that Adrian and my assistant's been working diligently to try and get all these neighborhood alliances up and running, and Northwest has been kind of dormant, and all these people that we're appointing tonight have all decided to get the Northwest Neighborhood Alliance back on track. So I'm excited about that. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, ordinance, second reading, we have none. Item 7, ordinance, first reading, we have at this time item 7A. Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Ordinance number 4-2019, an ordinance providing for the defeasance of a portion of the outstanding electric light and power system revenue bonds taxable 2010A series of the City of Owensboro, Kentucky, introduced and publicly read on first reading the 16th day of April, 2019.
Okay, since there's no vote, do you have anything to add, City Manager?
I do not, Mayor.
Okay. Item 7B, Counselor.
Ordinance 5-2019, an ordinance amending Section 26-82 of Article 4 of Chapter 26 of the Owensboro Municipal Code entitled Electric Utility, and approving and adopting rates for the electric service furnished by the City Utility Commission of the City of Owensboro, Kentucky, introduced and publicly read on first reading the 16th day of April, 2019.
I think it'd be nice to recognize the OMU folks at this time. CEO, would you come to the mic and state your name and address for the record, please? You have the floor.
I'm Kevin Frizzell, 11710 Fields Road South, Utica, Kentucky,
Utica.
the big city of Utica.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin. I love you.
We have with us our chair of our commission, Mr. J.T. Fulkerson, who's on lots of boards around town. Also, we have our leadership team here. Michael Moore is our Director of Administrative Services. Tim Lyons is our Director of Delivery. Brad Houghton is our Director of Production. Chris Pointer is our Superintendent of Telecommunications. Sonia Dixon is our Manager of Public Relations. Sorry.
What was that?
It's all good. Manager of Public Relations, I'm sorry. Jason Potts is our Manager of Planning. Lynn Holland is our Director of Finance and Accounting, and Sarah McElwain is our Manager of Customer Service.
Excellent. You have a presentation you'd like to present to this group today?
I do.
Great.
So good afternoon. Usually when we come down and talk about electric bond issues and electric rates, the end result is that our customers' rates are going up. And I'm very pleased to be here tonight to say the end result of these actions that we're presenting to you tonight will be that our customers' rates will go down. And we don't get to say that very often, so I appreciate that. So, a quick overview. We have done our financial plan. We did that in November and presented that to our commission. And the results, just to get cut to the chase, predict that OMU's overall electric rates will go down in each of the next 5 fiscal years. The presentation or the projection we did identify that we'll have to take some action to maintain our debt service coverage ratio. That's related to the actions we're talking about tonight. And there are 3 components of that: the bond defeasance and refunding, the base rate increase, which are the 2 ordinances tonight, and then the ECA and ECCA rate decreases. And I will explain those here shortly. But the overall result of that is that our base rate increase will be more than offset by the other components for rates going down, so that we will overall have an overall rate decrease for our customers. So we'll talk a little bit about our rate structure, assumptions that went into our financial planning, our metrics, a discussion of the bond defeasance that we've presented tonight, and the refunding plan that we'll be presenting in the upcoming fiscal year. A little bit about cost of service and rate development, how we get to these numbers, and then updated financial and rate projections based on what we're proposing, and then we'll give a quick overview of the draft rate of the rate ordinance that's being presented. So a quick look back, how did we get here? We have been since 2013 doing resource planning and looking at the power supply situation for OMU. That's been a long process. It's done a lot. We've done a lot of exhaustive work. 99% of that was done in-house within OMU. And the result of that, as we've talked about previously, is that we will shut down Elmer Smith Station and exit the wholesale power market. And that really resulted in us being able to execute power purchase agreements to replace the power generated at Elmer Smith Station. And it lowered our power supply costs. It will lower our power supply costs, and that results in lower rates for our customers. As we went through this process, we were trying to stabilize our rates. Our rates have been rising, and our goal was to stop that rise, and we've actually been able to not only stop the rise, but actually start decreasing rates. So our rate structure is really have 3 components for our rates. Our base rate is set by ordinance by our commission and then approved by the city commission. Our base rate has 2 components for our residential and our commercial customers. We have a customer charge or a fixed monthly fee, as well as the kilowatt hour charge. And then our larger customers also have a demand charge, and that's the base rate. And then we have rate adjustments, and we have 2 rate adjustments: the energy cost adjustment, or ECA as we call it. That really collects the variable and the operation and maintenance costs that we have currently with Elmer Smith Station, and also any backup power costs. And then our ECCA, the environmental control cost adjustment, that rates to recover the costs that we incur for pollution controls at Elmer Smith. And those are just costs that are passed through that rate. So those 3 components add up, and that's what we call kind of our overall rate. Quickly on our assumptions, we are assuming in this projection that we're shutting down Elmer Smith Unit 1. The target shutdown date is June 1, so about 6 weeks from now we'll be shutting Elmer Smith 1 down. And then Elmer Smith 2 a year later on June 1 of 2020. As we do that, our expenses will be going down for those to operate that facility. We also will be seeing, we'll still have wholesale sales into the market for the next year, but we'll be seeing some decreased wholesale revenues, but also decreased costs as Elmer Smith 1 shuts down for the next fiscal year for OMU. This is our revenue requirements projected out. The takeaway from this slide, as you can see, in fiscal 21, beginning in fiscal 20 and then 21 and 22 and beyond, our revenue requirement goes down significantly, and that's as we transition away from Elmer Smith Station. We need less revenue from our customers. On this slide, you can see the bottom blue bar is the cost of power supplied from Elmer Smith, and you can see that bar decreasing and being filled in by the red bar. The red bar is the power purchase agreements that we have made that begin June 1 of 2020 and moving forward. So you can see we're replacing our power supply with the generation that we do at Elmer Smith with our power purchase agreements, or PPAs. As we went through this financial planning, we had to look at financial metrics that we're required to maintain from board policy, and also in some cases our bond covenants. And we looked at those metrics with this plan and our days cash on hand. The kind of three key ones are good. Our ECA balance, or the balance that we have, that ECA, the revenue that we get, we let that kind of float. So we have a balance that's either a balance that we're under recovering, that balance is due from the customer, or occasionally we over recover and it's a balance that we owe back to the customer. But we have to maintain that within limits set by our commission. We're good on that. But our debt service coverage ratio did not meet bond covenants moving forward without some action. So you can see this line at 1 is where it's required to be, and you can see without any action that would drop below 1, and that's not acceptable. So we looked at lots of, when I say we, our financial staff, Lynn and Jason primarily, and their folks, did a lot of analysis of lots of different combinations to how do we get our debt service coverage ratio in line and maintain our forecast moving forward. And the end result of that was a combination of bond defeasance, so actually paying off some bonds early, if you will, refunding some bonds or refinancing them, and then a base rate increase. And question that you might ask is, because the first question I asked, is why do we need a base rate increase if we're going to be able to lower the electric rate? And the way the financials work is, from an accounting perspective, revenue that we get through the ECA goes to offset that balance that we carry on the ECA, so it's not counted as covering our debt service. So we need to raise that revenue from a different source, if you will, and that's from the base rate. So that's why we need an adjustment of the base rate to increase the numerator of that calculation and also lower the debt service in the denominator to get us covering that metric. So the bond defeasance and refunding, it's 2 steps. Step 1 is what's on the agenda tonight, to defease up to about $3.5 million of bonds in this fiscal year by the end of May. And then next year, we'll be back to both refund and defease additional debt. We expect to refund or refinance about $78 million worth of our debt, and then defease or pay off using our reserves another $12 to $15 million worth of debt to maintain that debt service coverage ratio. And we do have sufficient reserves to do that as we exit the power generation business. We need to keep less reserves on hand, so we do have sufficient reserves to use reserves for this exercise. So this is what the debt looks like currently, and the light blue bars are the debt that we'll be defeasing or refunding. So the top of the dark blue bar is where our debt will go in our 5-year forecast. You can see we're removing some debt off of our books. The base rate adjustment is needed because we can't do all that through refinancing or refunding or defeasing bonds. We do need some increased revenue through our base rate. The overall revenue requirement we need from base rates is about an additional 4% in fiscal 20. And that's going to be done in a couple of steps, as I'll show as I get into the details of the rate ordinance. But we don't project any base rate increases in the 5-year forecast past fiscal 20. So it'll be one initial base rate increase, and then none are projected in the next 5 years. And then the reduction in the ECA rate that we're going to do and the ECCA rates, as those costs at Elmer Smith go down, will more than offset that base rate increase. So the result is we expect about, if you average all of our bills, about a 5.8% decrease by June of 2020. So how do we get there? Cost of service study, we use a consultant to do that. We do that every couple of years to make sure that we are covering our revenue requirements and to evaluate our cost by customer class. It takes different levels of cost to cover different customer classes, and we want to make sure that those costs are equitably recovered from each class, so we've done that. The results say that the base rate increase that we propose will cover our revenue requirement, and that cost recovery by class is reasonable, and we did make some adjustments to make sure our cost recovery amongst our customer classes is equitable. So after this plan is run through the model, these are the financial metrics afterward, and you can see this is the one that we were worried about. The red line is where we would have been, and the yellow line is the debt service coverage ratio after this plan is implemented. So you can see we're above the 1.0 for the entirety of the projection, and that was the goal of the defeasance and the base rate increase. And this is the good news slide. We look at our residential rates moving forward through our projection, and you can see fiscal 19 is where we are now at the far left of the slide, and you can see our residential rate is projected to decrease in each of the next 5 fiscal years past fiscal 19. And our other customer classes, the rates will decrease on a similar path as this as well. So we are showing that we'll be able to decrease rates in each of those next 5 fiscal years. If you look at the 3 components of our rates, the base rate is the blue on the bottom. You can see it goes up in fiscal 20. That's our increase we're talking about tonight, and stays flat. The green is the ECA. It will go down in fiscal 20. And then the red is the ECCA, and as you can see, as costs from Elmer Smith start peeling off, that red component goes down, and that is driving the next chart. This is a fairly simple chart to see if it's above the line, it's a rate increase. So you can see the ECA goes up, or the base rate goes up, ECA goes down, the green line, and the white is the sum of all of those. And you can see for every year, we project a rate decrease over the previous year in our next 5-year, in our financial forecast. So kind of turning now to the rate ordinance itself and what the rates look like. What we're going to do on the base rates, we're adjusting the base rates for all the classes, and the customer charge will go up. Right now for a residential and commercial it's $10. Next year it will go to $12.50, and then the next year to $15. And then similarly for our medium-sized industrial customers, it goes up in two steps over the next 2 years. And our larger customers, we just take one increase in the customer charge for them from 30 to 60. And then the KWH charge per KWH goes down, or goes up in fiscal 19 for all the classes. But then as the second phase of the customer charge comes in order that there's not a 2-step rate increase, the per KWH charge actually goes down so that it's levelized. So there's just one increase in the base rate in the initial phase. And then for our large industrial customers, their demand charges, they don't change. So the industrial customers will not see a change or an increase in their demand charge. For our customers by class, this is kind of our average use by class. You can see a residential customer when both phases are done. So in June of 2020, from today's bill would be about a $7.27 decrease, and about 5.61% after both those years have gone by, or by June of 2020, excuse me. And then all of our other customer classes go down similarly. Our GSP customers actually see about a 10%, over a 10% rate decrease Those are our largest industrial customers in our territory by the June of 2020 timeframe. And that's really due to the cost allocation that we've done and allocated those costs to where they need to be with our customer classes. Other changes we made to the rate ordinance in the language. We have extended our payment due date, so a payment now per the ordinance is late after 7 days. We extended that to 14. We've also lowered the cap on late fees in the ordinance from 10% to 8%. We've also added language that allows OMU to collect amounts that we have potentially underbilled to our customers, but also to credit customers amounts that we've overbilled. Our ordinance is silent on that now, and we needed to add that language just so that we could, the ordinance follows what we would actually do. The energy cost adjustment, right now, it's set up to recover costs from Elmer Smith because that's where our power comes from, and that's our energy cost. We made a slight modification to allow that to also recover costs from our purchase power agreements because after Elmer Smith station shuts down, those are where those costs will come through to us. We updated our net metering for the same reason. Our net metering for our renewable customers, they get credited avoided costs or costs of not generating at Elmer Smith. They would not get a credit if we hadn't have made this change. So now they'll get the credit for the power that we don't have to buy under the purchase power agreements moving forward. Then we clarified some of the applicability of our industrial rates, cleaned up some of the language there in our rate ordinance. We did add one new rate. This is called a cogeneration rate. This applies to our large industrial customers who use permanent generation on site that's non-renewable to generate their own power for their own use. And this is for those facilities greater than 1,000 kilowatts. The cogeneration rate allows the customer to receive credit for providing excess generation when they have it into the OMU system. We don't have a mechanism for that now, so this will allow that to happen. These customers will also be on our standby rate so that if at any time they can't supply their power from their existing generation, then they will be supplied from OMU. So this will require new interconnection agreements with these customers, but currently we don't have that ability in our rates to credit those customers if they have excess generation to sell back into our system. That's an overview of the rate ordinance. So where we are today, our commission has approved the rate ordinance and the bond defeasance ordinance for the $3 million for the first phase of it for this fiscal year. That's before you on the first reading tonight. Our commission has also already approved lowering the ECA rate from its current 0.0507 or 5.07 cents per kWh to 4.3 cents per kWh, and that will go into effect on June 1st. Contingent upon these two ordinances being approved tonight. So when these are approved at the second reading on June 1st, that rate decrease is locked in. So in summary, we are very happy to say that we were able to, through our projections, project a rate decrease in each of the next 5 fiscal years using the bond defeasance and a base rate increase for our debt service coverage, but also to lower our ECA rate as well as lower costs from Elmer Smith as Elmer Smith goes through its retirement phase. That will allow us our overall rate will go down, and again by an average of about 5.8% across if you average all those customer classes. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions.
Commission? Mr. Condor.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I was checking off each one of them that you hit up there, Mr. Frizzell. You did a great job. Just a quick question to look at the ECA and ECCA. Will there ever be a time where they don't exist, where you won't need them at all?
In the future, the ECCA rate, as we get all of the costs recovered from Elmer Smith for environmental controls, that rate should go effectively to 0. The ECA, depending on how what our power supply source is, will probably remain, and that's the rate through which a variable cost now is our cost of production at Elmer Smith. That variable cost in the future will be cost of purchase from whomever we're purchasing from.
From a third party or
Yes.
whomever that you do, correct? And then with all the defeasance that you're doing, or basically paying off debt, the debt that OMU currently has, how much is that, and how far out does that go, please?
The principal is about 146 million, and through the end of
The plant goes through 26, 1126.
Can't hear you from.
the debt on the Elmer Smith plant is paid off through at the end of 26, isn't it? 1126.
Delivery is 1127, and the fiber goes to 37.
And the delivery is a year later, 1127. Then fiber is about 6 million. 6 million of that is our fiber, and it goes another 20 years.
So
or
in
15
between
years.
that, in between that time frame of today versus 2026 and paying down all of that debt, I assume that you're going to have another big plan coming out as to what you want to do starting 2027, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. We will, our PPA for the bulk of our power with Big Rivers Electric is a deal that goes through the end of 2026.
Oh, there we go.
We will be doing another power supply study, probably kick that off in a couple of years to see what goes beyond that, whether it's another PPA with another entity, or what our power supply options are at that point.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, staff. Good job.
No, Kevin, I don't claim to understand all this as we talked yesterday, but, it looks like a lot of it's good news from the purchase agreement. Is that correct, that you've got with Big Rivers?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Is their ECA and ECCA, is it capped? If it goes up, does that affect ours?
No, our purchase power agreement with Big Rivers is for a fixed price for the term of the agreement. So we
Okay.
will not be exposed to additional environmental control costs that they might have on their system.
And what is the cost for decommissioning the Elmer Smith plant?
We're doing a study on that right now.
Okay.
It depends on the level of decommissioning we do. It's anything from $10 to $12 million up to, name a price, 40 to 50 million if you want to take that plant completely down to the ground. So we're doing a study on that. We'll be presenting those numbers to our commission probably this summer and trying to determine what the best method for decommissioning is, and whether there's infrastructure there we may want to keep for something that future commissions may want to do with that facility with respect to power generation or something else.
So it looks like you're trying to kind of move toward alternative energy in the future. Would that be
One of the
incorrect
PPAs,
assumption?
yes, one of the PPAs that we have, Big Rivers, the PPA there is the bulk of our power. It's 90% of our power need. But we also have an allocation from the Southeast Power Administration. That's hydropower. That's about 5% of our power. We have that today, and that will continue on, as well as we have a purchase power agreement with a solar facility that will provide about another 5% of our power beginning at the end of 2022 when that facility comes online.
Because, it looks like coal's probably an election cycle issue, so I was just curious as how you're prepared to move away from coal, and you've got a good plan for other renewable energy.
The good thing that our commission did is they made a good choice and not to lock us in for a very long term for any one source of supply, so that whatever happens, we've got some flexibility in to diversify our supply moving forward.
And did you sign up for 4 more or 5 more years as CEO is what I wanted to know.
It's open-ended.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Anybody else have anything? Commissioner Magdalene.
Thanks, Mayor. Kevin, thank you for explaining this where we can understand it. It's a complicated
You're by
ordinance,
yourself on that one.
and it was a good job.
Well, I pared this down from about a 70-slide presentation. I didn't think you wanted that. Thank you all.
Thanks, OMU. Thanks for all you do. Got great folks that work out there. We're very proud to be part of you. Thanks so much. Okay. JT, you can't leave yet. We got more meetings. At this time, I will open it up for public comment. You have an opportunity for 3 minutes at the podium. Please state your name and address, Mr. Lacey, for the record, please.
Yeah, James Lacey Camoff, 1119 Pembroke, Apartment 4, Owensboro, Kentucky, United States of America. God bless America.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. No.
Well, 3 minutes. I really thought I was just going to get 60 seconds, so I appreciate
It's a new
that.
mayor.
Now I'm wasting it, And to get sidetracked, I appreciate your question about the ECA. I think you really asked a question about the ECA, and I think the answer, with all due respect, was given concerning the ECCA. And it is complicated, and I've been following it for years and actually been part of the process of generating power, and I'm still lost, to be honest with you. It is so complicated.
Yeah, I just seen like a Kroger truck unload, to be honest with you.
But you do have a really good question, because I do hear it really changed. The ECA is important, and originally I thought it wasn't a pass-through cost, but listening to Kevin today, I thought he really said that it is going to be a pass-through cost, and it could be an expensive pass-through cost. I think he answered about the environmental cost, and the ECA is about the energy cost. And it is an important question, and I don't really think it was answered, to be honest with you. But so anyway, but what I really come down here to speak about, and OMU is doing many good things, and I think everybody agree that this is a step in the right direction. The late fees, lowering the late fees for people in this community that struggle to pay their bills is a good thing. The cogeneration part of it, to allow manufacturers out there to generate power and to being reimbursed. But that kind of leads to my concern is about, and it's theoretical because we have very few people that have rooftop solar at the moment, and Lord willing, there'll be more in this community and someday a lot. But when you continue to raise the base price, or really the fixed monthly fee would probably be a better description, you make it more expensive for people to put solar on their roof because they're going to want to be connected to OMU, but yet if they are connected, they're going to have to pay this base rate. So, and I do think, reading, that it is a collective, here's a conspiracy theory, that it is a collective. That's just
what I wanted tonight. Yeah, give me a conspiracy theory.
It is a collective push to put the cost up front, because if people do begin to install rooftop solar, what happens is that it makes sure that the utility gets their money up front. You know, they get this fixed cost. So what I would like to propose, I'm sure this is going to pass, I would be amazed if it didn't, but to consider people in the future to be exempt, if they would like to install solar in our community, that these fixed costs, like that we're agreeing to today, or I say we, but the commission, the base rate increase be waived for people that want to do something good for our environment, that maybe we waive it for those individuals. So I'd just like to throw that on the table and consider the big picture, because it really is complicated. And I could go on and say a lot of other things, but
well, I appreciate you being here tonight, James.
Okay, thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you. Okay, item number 8 on the agenda is municipal orders. Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. Municipal Order 5-2019, a municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of agreement with the Owensboro Davis County Industrial Foundation, whereby the city will purchase the foundation's interest in 3 properties in order to provide capital to the foundation for use in future economic development efforts. Introduced and publicly read for approval this 16th day of April, 2019.
Thank you, Counselor. At this time, I'll make a motion to approve. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, we'll have second for discussion, and I'll call on City Manager for his interpretation of where this is going, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This municipal order authorizes an agreement between the city and the Owensboro Davis County Industrial Foundation for the city to purchase the foundation's interest in 3 downtown properties. Since the 1950s, the foundation has been an integral part of our community's economic development efforts. In partnership with the city and the county, the foundation buys land and assembles land to sell for economic or industrial projects, and then uses the proceeds from that sale to finance subsequent property acquisitions for subsequent properties. In 2012, the foundation was a partner in acquiring property to bring Boardwalk or Texas Gas to their new office downtown. Since the foundation sells its property to generate capital for subsequent projects, the city's intent has been to purchase the foundation's interest in these properties. This agreement formalizes that arrangement. My intent is to buy out the foundation over the next 3 years. In fact, in the draft budget we'll discuss next week, it includes the first payment to do so. At the conclusion of the buyout process, the city will be the sole owner of 2 properties, and 1 property will be jointly owned by the city and the county.
Perfect. And I can tell you from the 3,000 meetings that this has been an arduous process at best, but it certainly gives us an opportunity to have some control of a few little spots where all the action is going to happen. So any other discussion from the commission? I think it's a great deal. Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item 8B, Counselor.
Municipal Order 6-2019, a municipal order authorizing and directing the mayor to negotiate and execute a real estate purchase and sale agreement for the acquisition of property at 710 West 2nd Street, and further authorizing the mayor to execute a deed transferring a 1/3 interest in the property in accordance with KRS 82.083 subsection 4 to the Davis County Fiscal Court. Introduced and publicly read for approval this 16th day of April 2019.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
City Manager, you want to make comment?
I do, Mayor. Thank you. This is a 2-part municipal order, as the city attorney stated. First is for the city to purchase the property at 710 West 2nd Street. That's formerly where the Royce restaurant was located. And then secondly, for the city to sell 1/3 of an interest in that property to the county. Property to be acquired in this action is contiguous to or adjacent to the parcel that I just referenced in the last item that will be jointly owned by the city and the county. So together, this item and the previous municipal order will result in the city and the county assembling a full block to be held in public hands. For now, the southern parcel will remain parking for Boardwalk, and the northern parcel can remain parking for the convention center. However, it could someday serve as a site for a future economic development project. So essentially, we would be, the city and the county would be the owner of the entire block between 2nd and 3rd Streets and Elm and Walnut Streets. We would, of course, relocate Boardwalk parking if and when this site is redeveloped. This transaction will be conducted with funds currently on hand.
Good job. Any discussion from the commission? Okay, hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item 8C, Counselor.
Municipal Order 7-2019, a municipal order authorizing the mayor to sign a memorandum of agreement between the City of Owensboro and Riverfront Brio, LLC, providing a $4,600,000 financial incentive for the construction and opening of a new downtown hotel, a residential development, and parking infrastructure containing not less than 400 parking spaces, and further providing that the city shall be entitled to reimbursement of the financial incentive via all tax increment financing revenue that Riverfront Brio LLC would otherwise be entitled to recoup for its cost. Introduced and publicly read for approval the 16th day of April 2019.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll make a motion to approve. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Discussion, City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. This
You're
municipal order approves the incentive agreement for the hotel and residential project that was formally announced yesterday. The city is investing $4.6 million in a public-private partnership to support the project. The agreement requires the developer to complete a project with at least 120 hotel rooms, at least 186 residential units, and at least 400 spaces in an attached parking garage. The incentive will be paid from funds currently on hand, so no new debt will be issued. The funds are restricted and must be used for a transportation-related purpose, so parking is an appropriate use. State and local TIF revenues will reimburse the city for the funds we're investing in the project. Based on the year 1 increment provided earlier by Angela Hamrick in her previous report, we are confident the TIF will generate more than sufficient funds to do so, so the incentive will not have an impact on the city's general fund. In addition, TIF funds cannot be used to acquire property, so partnering in this manner with the developer to provide parking on the project site is ideal from the city's perspective. 2 existing downtown hotels both participated in the State Tourism Development Incentive Program. However, because of its location within the downtown TIF, this 3rd hotel is not eligible for that state program. This was a consideration as we negotiated the terms of the incentive, so the public incentive for this project is commensurate with previous projects. This action also authorizes the city to sell to the developer the Roberts Brothers automotive property we recently purchased. We will sell the property at the same price that we paid, so the city will be made whole on that transaction. This municipal order is the culmination of countless hours of negotiation, but the discussions produced an agreement that is appropriate considering the scope of the project. As a result, I recommend approval.
Thank you. Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner Condon.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
As I've said before, I never thought a project like this would ever come to Owensboro. It's absolutely astounding to see it. Hopefully everyone in our community will be proud of it. The other thing I'd like to say is if there are any other developers that wish to task city staff and ourselves to have another project, bring it on. We'd love to see other things done within our community and help us grow, help grow our tax base in a bigger and better way. Thank you very much, Mayor.
You're welcome. Commissioner, well, who's next? Smith Wright?
What he said.
What he said. Good job. I would like to recognize Matt Hayden and all his partners because they're actually responsible for nearly all of the TIF revenue and they hold the largest amount of debt for construction of public infrastructure in the community. So thank you, Matt. I have a few comments that I'm going to be on the Brad Bird show, whatever, tomorrow night, I guess at 9 o'clock. So there's a little synopsis of what's actually going to happen and how you should understand that this agreement wasn't entered into lightly. We spent about 20 Friday afternoons and a lot of red line contracting, and I have to commend Nate and Angela and well, he's already gone. I'm not going to condemn him, but countless hours of trying to make sure that this project qualified for TIF reimbursement. It qualified to make sure that we were doing the best job we could as stakeholders for the taxpayers' money, and that's critical to this commission. So I'm just going to quickly read through this, and I hope you can kind of catch on to what we're saying. You know, we've been trying to get another hotel downtown, so we could get over the 350 hotel number, because the Convention Visitors Bureau tells us that that we need around 400 hotel rooms downtown to attract larger conventions, and that's going to get us close. An additional 120 rooms will put the convention center in a position to finally compete for the larger conventions. Do I know how many larger conventions there are? I do not know that, but this certainly will give us an opportunity to have a seat at the table. And you know, from the state of the city, you know, I brought up the fact that we have got to have, you know, human density downtown. If you look at that TIF, the 4th Street Live, I think it is, in Louisville, you know, it's wonderful during the day, but come 5 o'clock, all those people that work in that area, they're going home to soccer games and baseball games, and there's a whole lot less activity. We actually need people living down there to make this project work. So getting 350 hotels directly adjacent to the convention center lowers our subsidy between $70,000 and $150,000 a year, plus tens of thousands of dollars that goes to the Conventions and Visitors Bureau and local tax revenue based on heads and beds, and the spending local spending while they're in the town. Direct revenue base or functions outside the convention center and the convention center business itself. Hotel and residential development on this block significantly improves the land values of folks that have land around that area, which is a good thing. And right now, you know, we're taking a piece of blighted property and putting a landmark on it. And I mean, I don't know how you know, we got kind of clobbered on social media. Thanks for that article in the paper, the headlines, but it's the same people that complain when we weren't doing anything. So, you know, we just got to take that with a grain of salt. But it is difficult to try and accommodate everyone's thought process on this. But, you know, residential density, like I said, it's absolutely critical to vibrant downtown. And this project will bring hundreds of new residential inhabitants to our downtown, which will help us get closer to the goals of the original master plan that 2 previous commissions ago, you know, got it's funny, it's what Gulfstream, wasn't it? Gulf something or other out of, what was it? Gulf Gateway, yeah, Gateway out of Texas. And this was the 3rd leg of this project. You know, you need residential, you need restaurants, you need give me the other 3 R's. What are they? Residential, restaurants, retail, recreation, and those things can be accomplished now with a vibrant downtown. The federal government actually helped in this, by creating opportunity zones downtown, so that we could also draw from that little niche that's in the federal government. So the bottom line, all communities all over the country that would give up their tax base for decades in order to have a project like this in their downtown. And I'm convinced of that. Those of you that travel outside Davis County,
thank you.
You could find out in a heartbeat what other downtowns would like. And it's kind of historical if you go back and look at a lot of downtowns. We had a vibrant downtown, and then all of a sudden someone built a mall at Westland Park Plaza, and you only lost some of those folks, so they moved out a little bit. And then as this town moved that way, you had a indoor mall. What's that mall called? What is it? Town Square Mall. I don't do many malls, thank you, honey. My wife does malls. And, so they move out there. And then all of a sudden it becomes a resurgence of people want to go back to downtown. So we're right in the model of all the other folks. And to have the opportunity to have residential, 3 hotels, restaurants, recreation, I'm telling you, this, as I told them in Washington last week, this place is rocking. So you throw in the construction jobs, that helps our occupational license fee, just like those big grain bins that Owensboro Grain did, really helped our, there's just so many tentacles of this project that makes it so wonderful that if you got to growl about it, growl, because it ain't going to bother me a bit, because this is a good project, and we'd like to thank those developers that have the courage to stick their neck out. And I don't have this kind of courage, so we appreciate what you're doing. So okay, City Clerk, where are we?
City manager items.
I knew that. I just was seeing if you were paying attention. At this time, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number, help me, Counselor, 8C, 9A. Turn the page. City manager items.
Thank you, Mayor. If you would acknowledge Angela Hamrick to present the February financial report.
Okay, Ms. Hamrick, I acknowledge you.
Yes, Mayor and Commission. The financial report for the month ended February 28th, 2019. Our general fund revenues through the end of February of $40,327,563 were $809,756 over budget. Our general fund expenditures of $35,149,073 were $2,188,536 under budget. This is primarily due to timing and maintenance, supplies, and the other categories mostly due to professional and technical services and street lighting in the general government division, and savings in personnel services. Outside of timing variances, the revenues and the expenditures in our other funds are in line with the year-to-date budget. And if you will refer to your screen, please. This graph represents a picture of our total general fund revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year to date, or 8 months ended February 28th. The green bar reflects revenue at the old rates for occupational, net profit, and insurance premium license fee. The blue bar represents revenue at the new rates. The red bar reflects the expenditures. The year-end would have reflected a surplus of only $639,930 on the old rate structure. With the new rate structure, we have a surplus of $5,178,490. Please note, with the warmer, higher expenditure months ahead of us, this surplus will level out. And I'd also like to add, thanks to the Commission stepping up to the plate with the tax increase that we had, we are in a stable, good position. And the $5 million may look like a lot now, but like I said, we got the warmer months coming down the pike. And we, if you watch headlines in papers for other cities, they're having big struggles with this state pension. And we're much better, in a much better place for that.
And Moody's guy's not mad at us anymore?
Not the last time I talked to him, no.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll make a motion to file for audit. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Item 9B, consider personnel appointment. City Manager.
Ethan Board, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to firefighter, effective April 16th. Jonathan Mattingly, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to lieutenant with the fire department, effective April 16th. Austin Esther, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to police officer, effective April 16th. Rachel Adkins, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to public works laborer maintenance helper, effective April 16th. Kaylin Fox, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to purchasing agent, effective April 23rd. And Angel Zeffie, regular, full-time, non-civil service appointment to lead telecommunicator, effective April 29th. Mayor, these are all current employees transitioning from probationary to regular status.
Thank you, sir. I'll make a motion to approve. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item 9C, city manager comments.
No comments tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
You're welcome. Item 10, communications from elected officials. Commissioner Smith-Wright.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
The only thing I have is just I want to wish everyone a happy Easter since we won't meet again before then.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Larry Maglinger.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I want to thank Angela and her whole team for the hard work on the TIF. Looks like it's paying off. I think we're very fortunate to have the Riverport and its economic impact. And thank you, OMU, for lowering our electrical rates.
I love to see Kevin smile. That's awesome. That impact. Okay, Commissioner Condon.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment. As usual this time of year, April 15th was yesterday. He paid the taxes. I always reminded of my dad. Once I was griping about taxes to him, and he said, son, be glad you got the money to pay the taxes. And about this time, the mayor says,
I don't know. What did you say?
you usually say, I don't mind paying taxes.
I don't mind paying taxes, but I'm a little upset with how they spend my dad blame money.
There you go. And thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Commissioner Sanford, real estate expert.
Oh, yeah. Just a couple things. At the Bluegrass Museum on Saturday, saw about 330 kids taking music lessons.
That's awesome. Lanham's unbelievable.
Oh, it was, yeah.
He is a true Owensboro asset.
Great to be in that facility and see so many people using it. And from what I understand, they have 79 bookings already. And it's great to see this whole thing that we're talking about today with this new hotel and things like that. It's all a big picture. It all comes together. It's about parking, people living downtown, and all the things that are being offered. And it all comes together in one big piece. And like the mayor said, there's three parts to it, so you can't just do one or two. You have to do it all to get it to work. And I think we're heading in the right direction. And I want to commend you also, Angela, and your staff. That's from what you just mentioned, what you went through. That's a big deal. And the investment coming back to us, I think that's a no-brainer. It makes a lot of sense. So kudos to you, and I look forward to see what's going to be happening in this city in 5 years from now. I think we're just doing some tremendous things. Thanks.
You're welcome. I got a couple quick comments. I know we've been here a long time. I want to tell everybody that for Owensboro, our big exhibit, that'll be May the 9th at the Convention Center. Got a little hors d'oeuvres. We're going to show the 6, I think, new pigs that come out. Do what? May the 9th, 6 p.m. at the Owensboro Convention Center. It's going to be, the color for your clothing should be black suit with pink shirt, as I'm told. And polka dotted tie if you got a lot of courage. So that's the colors, a black suit and pink shirt. Does that help you any, Pam? Yeah, okay, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, next item, last week, Candace Brake and Jacqueline and Jessica put together a chamber fly-in. I've done that this is the 3rd year, and it gives us an opportunity to tell our story to federal elected officials. It was the best that we've had ever, and we had such access. It was unbelievable. We met with Senator McConnell his chief of staff about a variety of issues, none like hemp. You know, can we get a processing plant at the airport? We met in the Department of Transportation, and we had Brian Wright tell his, and he did a great job. He tells a story about to the maritime people, because that's part of the build grant. We met with U.S. Department of Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao and former Owensboro resident Todd Inman. We had the division chair. They got all these titles, but basically she ran the transit system, of which we have Pamela Canary now, who's doing a wonderful job, and she's made herself relevant in this discussion. We met with Rand Paul, who thought that we should create a Chamber of Commerce insurance co-op that would encompass the entire United States, so we'd have enough people to pound on the insurance companies, which is a good idea. We met with new Senator Mike Braun, who is from Indiana, who is from Huntingburg, who took the mayor of Jasper as his chief of staff, and that's where the mid-state corridor needs to start, and end at the Natcher Bridge, and he is on infrastructure and public works in the Senate. It was just remarkable, all the opportunities that this community has through the relationships that not only the elected officials have built with our residents, but our residents have built with the elected officials. And I'm extremely excited that on the next year or so that, you know, it does take a long time to get junk done in government, doesn't it, Kevin? You know, but we're pressing hard for a lot of things. The pilot program at the airport went over tremendous. It's a pilot program, actually. They were extremely excited about that. We spoke with Workforce Development and talking with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in relationship to the community college. So it was a tremendous day. I don't believe I was ever as tired playing football, playing baseball, working on a truck than I was when I got home and lay down in that bed. But these young people don't know when to quit, so they just keep going. I went to the bed, but we had a great group. You can look on the website and see all it went, but we had airport, riverport, business, social. It was a fun group, and I want to thank Candace and her group at the Chamber, because they really knocked it out of the park. There was one little walking issue that I had a problem with, but we're not going to talk about that. But it was great, and it gets us in front of, you know, you think about it, you know, we don't really print money. State doesn't really print money, but guess what? They're still printing money up there, so you have to be connected, and you have to build relationships with those folks. Last item I want to bring up, I had the opportunity to attend, as I think Commissioner Condor did. I'm not sure about the rest of you, I couldn't really tell, but Herschel Woody Williams, he's the last Marine Medal of Honor winner of World War II. He's 95 years old. And Kathy Mullins, our Gold Star mother, put together a program at the Bluegrass Museum on the 3rd floor. It's supposed to have a restaurant, but now it's got an events area. But this guy's 95, and they seated me next to him. He's like 5'0", 5'5". He was turned down in the Marine Corps because he was too short. They have a 5'6" standard. He kept going back until they hired him, until they signed him up. And we were sitting there talking, and he was telling me the story, and I said, you know, I got drafted to go to Vietnam, but they told me I was too heavy for my height. You know, just in passing, just making conversation. What did he say the first thing he went up there, Barbara? You know, they would turn me down in the Marines because I was too short. They turned down the Marine because he was too heavy. I mean, this guy's 95. It was unbelievable. He spoke 20 minutes, no notes, and the whole idea and the whole object of this meeting was to create some revenue, to create a Gold Star monument or out in front by our Shelton Memorial, and we need to be the first one in the state of Kentucky to have one. So I'm putting a little bug in people's ears, because it was pretty emotional, wasn't it, with all those Gold Star moms, dads, and families. And this guy's 95. He goes all over the country. West Virginia's got 5 of them. Can you imagine such a thing? Texas got 11. We don't have one in Kentucky. We've got to have one here in Owensboro. So I'm making a pitch to those that might want to participate in this venture, because I have some brochures. It's a beautiful thing, and Woody Williams presented the city of Owensboro with a book, and I promise you, it might have weighed 8 or 10 pounds. It was every Medal of Honor winner in the history of America, with a picture and a synopsis of how they earned, not won, but earned the Medal of Honor. And again, this is how this guy's 95. I'm saying, man, you got to sign my book. So I'm Saturday morning, nobody's got a pen. So I finally found one. Suzanne Miles gave me one. I went over there. I said, and he wanted you to call him Woody. And I said, I'd be honored if you'd sign this book for us, because we're going to display it here. And he goes, that pen won't work. Pulls out a Sharpie. He's on top of it. Signed it. And I have a very good friend that's a Medal of Honor winner from Vietnam. I sent it to him. He's going to sign it. So we'll have that book here shortly to display. And I promise you, it's unbelievable. It's got every president since George Washington that has given out a Medal of Honor to a soldier, and a little story about everyone all the way through to today. So it's we're very honored, and I thank Kathy Mullins and her group of Gold Star moms for putting that project together, because it blew us away then, Barb. It was unbelievable. So anyway,
Man, just a little comment. He 95 years old, and I guarantee you, this guy was healthy as a horse.
He has his own teeth.
Oh,
he's
yes.
95.
It was
unbelievable.
Astounding with what this guy was. I'm like,
no hearing aids.
95. I'm like, wow.
And he's bouncing around there, and
He was everywhere.
It was fabulous. So anyway, okay. Oops, I forget the one thing that James Lacey's waiting on. My bad. Open public forum. Okay. Members of the audience are invited to address the city commission on any matter of public concern in tonight's agenda. If there's no one here that'd like to do public concern, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.